considered to be a long-lost Jewish esoteric tradition, sometimes calling this tradition the secrets of wisdom, sometimes the secrets of Torah. This act of recovery was based on two premises. The first is that it is in the powers of an outstanding individual, or more precisely, in his own individual powers, to restore at least parts of a body of knowledge containing the lost esoteric teachings. The second is that such an individual must disseminate these teachings in writing, despite a clear prohibition on revealing the secrets of Torah, as part of their revival, and in order to prevent another case of their falling prey to forgetfulness. On this issue I've elaborated in the forthcoming book. These premises, thus I wish to argue today, have shaped the consciousness of authors for generations, instigating a long-term process of multifaceted writings in the realm of the secrets of Torah, Sitrei Torah in Hebrew. The establishment of the notion of an acute crisis in the realm of Jewish esotericism that was brought about by the very dissemination of the Guide of the Perplexed in the Iberian Peninsula and beyond, generated a cultural movement that instilled the paradoxical norm of violating the long-standing prohibition on writing of what are considered to be secret teachings. 13th century authors, such as the Provençal Samuel ibn Gibbon, Isaac ibn Latif of Toledo, Abraham Abulafia, Ezra of Gerona, and Moses de Leon, employ the Maimonidean premises to construct their own works, in which they claim to be revealing the esoteric teachings of Judaism. However different their teachings proved to be in comparison to those of the Guide and to each other, these authors shared nonetheless the basic Maimonidean idea that the secrets of Torah, that is, a corpus of Jewish esoteric knowledge, was indeed lost, in part or altogether, from the Jews. In addition, they shared the two aforementioned premises inherited from Maimonides that have shaped their ethos and modus operandi. These premises are, to recall, 1. That the body of lost knowledge is redeemable by the sheer intellectual force of a distinct individual. 2. That the individual who recovers the secrets must reveal them, even if in caution and with some discretion, as part of the rescue from further oblivion. The self-understanding of these authors with regards to what had happened to Jewish esoteric teachings throughout the ages and in the days of diasporic existence was shaped by Maimonides' Guide. Furthermore, the Guide provided them with a mode of counteracting the crisis of Jewish esotericism. This mode was adopted by the aforementioned authors in a creative and even subversive way. Subversive, why? These authors indeed accepted Maimonides' argument that the esoteric knowledge was indeed lost, and also learned from his Guide the possibilities that are open to them in this grim situation, that is, the need to shift from esotericism to exotericism due to the crisis of esoteric transmission. However, they did not accept, each in his own way, Maimonides' own other argument, that the Guide suffices to fill the gap and to complete the act of restoring the secrets. This situation has left them with a realm of knowledge that is highly esteemed in terms of the hierarchy of knowledge, but very much ruptured in terms of its contents, as well as with respect to the method that will allow for the recovery of the lost knowledge. Each author that considered himself to be an exquisite individual could now step in and try to fill the gap. To our concern, it is important to note that although there are stark differences in the contents of the works of these authors when compared to the Guide, still something non-doctrinal from the Guide was retained in them. This is the genre founded by Maimonides of works in which secrets of scripture are to be revealed, as well as the cultural energy of lifting the veil from the secret teachings. Even when these authors distanced themselves from the contents of Maimonides' guide, they have poured their own ideas into a cultural vessel forged by Maimonides in his guide. In this talk, I am going to focus on a single work written by one of the authors mentioned that will serve as a metonymy to the genre that I have presented. This work is a commentary on Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, written by an author who was one of the translators of Maimonides' guide to Hebrew, Samuel ibn Tibon. Shmuel ibn Tibon died in 1232. The long commentary of Shmuel ibn Tibon is a running commentary on all the verses of Kohelet, to which the author appended what he termed introductions, written in a neo-Aristotelian philosophical key. This method was required, according to Ibn Tibon, in order to reveal the secret meanings of the verses of Kohelet and to shed light on all that was left hidden by the biblical author, King Solomon. It is based on seeing Solomon as a link in a chain of a Jewish philosophical tradition that begins with Moses himself and ends with Ibn Tibon himself. According to this notion, Solomon, as well as other authors that belonged to this tradition, each interpreted the words of their predecessors, thereby keeping this branch of tradition alive. In his introduction to the commentary, Ibn Tibon is careful to present, as Maimonides did before him, the merits of oral transmission in comparison to the demerits of writing when it comes to the realm of wisdom. However, Ibn Tibon insists that, I'm reading from source number 1, nevertheless, any person who found in himself the ability to transmit chapter headings, Rashei Prakim, a couplet, a compound, which is important in the Jewish history, chapter headings in written form, meaning the secrets in abbreviated and esoteric form, without revealing any secret, did not refrain from composing or writing something about wisdom, so that the people who have understanding, though they are few, could understand his intention. In such a way, he could benefit people in these two ways, with the utility that comes from his mouth and tongue during his lifetime, and with the utility that derives from his written work, both during his lifetime, but also after his death. Ibn Tibon continues to present the Jewish tradition of wisdom, beginning from Moses. I'm reading from source number 2. The first person we find to have provided both kinds of utility was Moses, our master. There was no earlier sage or prophet whom we find to have composed a book. For these early figures taught the people and gave instruction only orally and in person. But then the master of prophets came along and, in accordance with God's will, composed a book for them in which he explained what ought to be explained to everyone and transmitted using chapter headings and suggestive statements what ought not to be revealed to everyone. In this way, he managed to leave behind a book as a legacy. Continuing to another figure, the book of Psalms was written by David using the same method. And for the sage Solomon, he has composed books in the fields of wisdom and behavior. He set down allegories, riddles, and mysteries, that is, secrets of the Torah, in order to benefit the people both during his lifetime and after his death. The sages, that is, the sages of the Mishnah and the Talmud, also wrote down hints and riddles scattered and dispersed in their midrashim that pertain to the subjects of wisdom and behavior. Each one wrote according to the wisdom he possessed in this subject and his ability to apply the art of concealment. However, the esoteric tradition was to face a crisis in the era following the composition of the Talmud, that is, in the days of the Geonim. In this era, argues Ibn Tibon, it was overshadowed by teachings in the fields of law and jurisprudence that have left the realm of wisdom untended and neglected. I'm continuing from source number 2, now the passage remarked 2. After the sages of the Talmud, however, only very few were moved to compose a book or write a word about these sciences. The composing of books about legal judgments and what is forbidden and permitted was sufficient for them. This situation, which has led to poverty of knowledge in Ibn Tibbon's terms, and which could have resulted in complete forgetfulness of wisdom and inability to decipher earlier esoteric teachings, was rectified by the figure of Maimonides. I'm reading, continuing from source number 2. Then God saw the poverty of knowledge in his nation, its great ignorance with respect to everything relating to wisdom, and he raised up a Redeemer, a wise and knowing man, wise in crafts and endowed with an understanding of whispering. So he knows how to speak, reveal and conceal together. A master in every area of wisdom. He is the true sage, the divine philosopher, our master and teacher Moses, the servant of God, son of great sage Rabbi Maimon. He widened even more than Solomon and the sages had done, the apertures in the showpiece of silver that covered the secrets which had been written by Moses about these notions. He added further explanation of the secrets and mysteries that he had found in the Torah, because he saw that there were only a few people who had understood them. According to Ibn Tibbon, it is already Moses who establishes the tradition of transmitting wisdom in a twofold manner, both orally and in writing. Interestingly, Ibn Tibbon brazenly omits a long list of medieval Jewish philosophers preceding Maimonides, including Saadia Gaon, Yitzhak Israeli, Shlomo ibn Gabirol, Bachya ibn Pakuda, Yehuda Halevi, and others, all well known to him. Some even translated to Hebrew by his father, Yehuda ibn Tibbon. In this, Ibn Tibbon accepts and integrates into his own list something of the self-consciousness of Maimonides, who saw his intellectual enterprise as a unique moment in the history of Jewish esotericism, unrelated to earlier writings in the field of medieval Jewish philosophy, and connected only to the canonical text of the Jewish tradition, the Bible, the Mishnah, and the Talmud. Moreover, in the passage we've just read, Ibn Tibbon projects back the tradition of wisdom among the Jews to fit the model of Maimonides' guide, in which in itself relies heavily upon an Islamic mode of writing called Tabdid al-Ilm, which is the transmission of esoteric knowledge in an abbreviated and condensed formulas that also involves scattering these formulas in sequences of an otherwise irrelevant text, aiming to occlude the esoteric knowledge in such a way that only an elect few will be able to uncover it. The landscape that is reprojected by this passage of Ibn Tibbon is one of a chain of texts that were all written in the same method as that of the guide, differing only in the degree of disclosing the secrets, as indicated by Ibn Tibbon's notion of widening the apertures of the showpiece, a metaphor that is based in a verse that Maimonides, in his introduction to the guide, sees as the embodiment of teaching esoterically through parables. A verse from Proverbs, like golden apples in silver showpieces, is a phrase well turned. The inner, hidden kernel of the parable is the golden apple, which is kept in a lattice of silver. The lattice represents both the extrinsic meaning of the proverb and the fact that through its narrow apertures, one may recognize the inner content of the secret. According to Ibn Tibbon, each and every historical age of the esoteric should include, ideally, an additional widening of the apertures of the lattice. However, in his own commentary on Kohelet, Ibn Tibbon does not indicate any such need for widening the apertures in his days, and indeed, it is only few years that separate between him and Maimonides. What is therefore the justification that allowed Ibn Tibbon to write his own work, that is, to continue the process of the revelation of secrets that was re-established by Maimonides, and to join the cohort of the elect few that were named in his chain of transmission? Ibn Tibbon's answer to this question is fourfold. All four components, as we are going to see, are related to the figure of Maimonides and to the guide of the perplexed. The first is the forceful passion and unflinching desire the author ascribes to himself. The second is a request received from an unknown wise man who implored him to write such a commentary. The third is redeeming the book of Ecclesiastes from other commentaries that distorted its meaning. And the fourth, maybe most important to our concern, is the death of Maimonides that cut off his exegetical enterprise and necessitated the intervention of Ibn Tibbon. The two latter components, as we should briefly see, arm Ibn Tibbon's commentary with the same sense of emergency that Maimonides utilized in the writing of the guide. First then, desire. In his introduction, Ibn Tibbon notes how it was Maimonides, in the few cases he explained the meanings of verses from Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs, stirred in him the desire to interpret these books, that is, to lift their veil of secrecy and to unveil their true meanings. At this stage, Ibn Tibbon speaks only of the desire to know the secrets of these books, and not to put them in writing. Thus Ibn Tibbon writes, throughout the treatise of his, meaning the Guide of the Perplexed, he also explicated some verses from Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs. When I, Samuel, son of Yehuda, Ibn Tibbon, saw his interpretations of these verses, and how extremely good they were, my soul longed for his interpretations of the other verses, that is, for a commentary on these three books. In this passage, Ibn Tibbon places himself in the position of Maimonides' beloved disciple, Yosef ibn Shimon ibn Aknin, who was the addressee of the Guide of the Perplexed, a work that was written, thus Maimonides writes, because of his disciples' great desire for intellectual matters. Ibn Tibbon claims that he, too, requested that his teacher, Maimonides, will expand and interpret for him. But in contrast to the generous response of Maimonides to his disciple, Yosef, Ibn Tibbon's wish was not fulfilled. In fact, Ibn Tibbon theatrically performs here the drama of the birth of the Guide of the Perplexed by describing its impossibility in his case, due to the death of the teacher before the teacher could fulfill a request. However, as Ibn Tibbon puts it, my spirit did not cool from its longing for commentaries on these books. The drama of desire transforms Ibn Tibbon from being a disciple who awaits the exegetical words of his teacher to being an exegete and the teacher himself. Indeed, the next phase of the drama involves an exchange of the roles. First, Ibn Tibbon asserts that then one day, while reading Ecclesiastes during Sukkot, I gave my heart to understand the following verse. There is a high one that watches over him that is high. Ki gavoa me'al gavoa shomer. It's a verse from the 5th chapter of Ecclesiastes. For its meaning is difficult, but although I contemplated the meaning of this verse, I did not write a word. Ibn Tibbon crosses a threshold and learns how to interpret, even if only a little of Kohelet himself. And behold, as in the case of Maimonides in his introduction to the Guide of the Perplexed, there arose a disciple to the teacher, who is, in Ibn Tibbon's words, among the intelligent men who search to find out acceptable words, and who is asking to explain the meaning of this same verse. The request from the disciple brings Ibn Tibbon to cross another threshold, as he now turns to writing. I wrote to him what seemed correct to me at the time, and I also explicated the verses that come before it and after it. This process released Ibn Tibbon to continue his pursuit of the secret meanings of Kohelet, as well as to continue writing the meanings he discovered, as he attests at the conclusion of his introduction, restating in a nutshell all that he recounted thus far. I'm reading source number 3. The fire of longing for the master's explication of these three books burned within me. Whenever I would study certain verses in Ecclesiastes, therefore, I would long to know their meaning, because they were beyond my reach, and because, as I have said, I have not found a teacher of righteousness. In this way, I give my heart to seek and search out the meanings of this book, to find its final aim and end, to understand its secrets and mysteries, to know its purpose, and to come to appreciate its character. When I cleansed my heart from the soil of ignorance, I received help from heaven, and my eyes were opened by God so that I could see a few of its meanings. But I said, I will not mention any of this, let alone write it down, lest I become a target for the arrows of the tongues of most people in my nation in this generation. Because of this, my rational faculty advised me not to write a word, but it remained in my heart as it were burning fire shut up in my bones, and I wearied myself to hold in what it seemed to me. I had understood what it seemed to me that I had understood of its meanings and statements, things which have been found perplexing by many people. Thus I could no longer refrain from writing what had been revealed to me. I said in my heart that even if many people of my time speak against me, it is impossible that not one or two of them will receive some benefit, whether during my generation or in that which follows. In all this, I follow the example of the true sage, Maimonides, for he too anticipated that many people would speak out against the novel things that he had set forth in the Guide of the Perplexed, but he chose to benefit the one who was worthy to receive its utility and to ignore the hundred of ignoramuses who speak out against him. How could I not have been drawn after him when it was the few verses I saw with his interpretation that had led me to undertake the explication of this book, to begin, so to speak. The disciple's desire is first transformed into an exegetical force, and then into a desire for writing, which finds its relief only in the production of a full commentary by Ibn Tibbon. Desire functions here as the main conductor of the narrative, enabling Ibn Tibbon, thus he argues, to overcome the obstacle, to ignore the risks inherent in the writings of his commentary, and eventually to embody the role of Maimonides in revealing the secrets of Torah, and to realize, in full, the model that was designed by Maimonides in the Guide of the Perplexed. Ibn Tibbon's desire is therefore not only the passion of the one who seeks wisdom, a well-known topos in Judeo-Arabic writings as well as more generally in Arabic written philosophical literature. It is also a distinct case of what René Girard termed mimetic desire, that is, a desire fashioned and channeled according to an already established model, in this case, the Maimonidean model of the writing of the Guide, stemming from a wish to partake in it, to realize it, and even to cast aside anyone else who aspires to fulfill such a desire. The desire for imitation thus involves an undercurrent of rejection, or at least an aspiration on part of the desiring subject to clear enough space for an independent fulfillment of such desires, free from the realization of others. How does Ibn Tibbon clear such a space for himself? The answer to this question is found first in Ibn Tibbon's assertion that Maimonides did not fathom the scope of the secrets that are enfolded in the verses of Kohelet. In his own words, I'm reading from source number 4, he made known the intention of Moses' Torah and whatever could be made known of its secrets. He explicated the intention of Job in its entirety. He also alluded to most of the mysteries found in the prophetic books, as well as the principal intention of Proverbs and Song of Songs. As for Ecclesiastes, however, although he explicated some of its verses, I have not found that he did so, that is, revealed the principal intention. The principal intention of Kohelet was thus not revealed by Maimonides, and it is still awaited an exegete who will redeem it from oblivion. The importance of this issue exacerbated, argues Ibn Tibbon, because of the death of Maimonides. For the death of the master brought to an end the possibility that he will complete his intellectual endeavor of redeeming the tradition of wisdom among the Jews. Here, Ibn Tibbon refers to the introduction to the third part of the Guide of the Perplexed, but with an interesting twist. In his introduction, Maimonides, addressing his beloved disciple, claims that he was impelled to write his work because, I'm reading from source number 5, If I had omitted setting down something of that which appeared to me as clear, so that knowledge would perish when I perish, as is inevitable, I should have considered that conduct as extremely cowardly with regards to you and everyone who is perplexed. It would have been, as it were, robbing one who deserves the truth of the truth, or begrudging an heir of his inheritance. Maimonides' consciousness of his inevitable death, together with his assessment of himself as a unique figure who rescued wisdom from oblivion among the Jews, justify, thus he argues, the writing of the esoteric knowledge. In other words, in order to overcome another possible loss of the esoteric lore that may occur with his death, Maimonides was, so to speak, forced to write his own work. The writing of the guide is presented as a measure taken to prevent the resurgence of crisis and to allow for the ongoing cultural existence and knowledge of the secrets of the Torah. Using Maimonides' own argument in his commentary on Kohelet, Ibn Tibbon refers to the actual death of Maimonides and describes his master as leaving a body of esoteric knowledge unrecovered and forgotten. Source number 6. On account of my great longing for the commentaries on Proverbs, Kohelet, and Song of Songs, I set my face like a flint. It's from a verse from Yeshayahu, and wrote to the true sage Maimonides, requested that he send us a commentary, if his commentary on these books had already been written. If he had not yet written a commentary, I beseeched him to bestow grace yet again upon his people, upon the people of his nation, and to write such a commentary, and avoid leaving his people bereft of the explications of these 3 books. This is precisely what I wrote to him. My letters were dispatched with one of our brothers who had set out for Egypt, but before they reached Maimonides, the Lord brought down the iniquity of us all upon him. He was gathered unto his people and placed into a coffin in Egypt, as a result of which my letters returned empty and my hope was lost. The Guide of the Perplexed, according to Ibn Tibbon, is thus a cultural rescue enterprise that did not reach its full realization, that was abruptly cut with the death of Maimonides, and that had left the vast realms of esoteric knowledge that is yet to be revealed. The risk of neglecting the secrets of Torah and the cultural implications of such negligence, according to Ibn Tibbon, have yet to pass, and they have exacerbated with the death of Maimonides for the short windows of opportunity that was opened in Maimonides' lifetime has now been closed. The measure taken by Maimonides in the very writing of his guide, that was written according to the author due to his inevitable death in an unknown future, was, according to Ibn Tibbon, only partial, for that very reason. The existence of the Guide of the Perplexed, a book that was indeed written, reveals, according to Ibn Tibbon, a yet-to-be-written book, a kind of twin book that was never born, and that includes the explication of most of Scripture's wisdom literature, as well as the Song of Songs. This is clearly attested by the words of Ibn Tibbon that we've just read, in which he begs Maimonides, so to speak, to bestow grace yet again upon the people of his nation, and to write such a commentary, and avoid leaving his people bereft of interpretations. The writing of the commentary on Kohelet is presented by the author as an inevitable measure taken to counteract the crisis that arose due to Maimonides' death. Ibn Tibbon declares that he did all he could to prevent the outbreak of this crisis by sending an epistle to Maimonides beseeching him to write such a commentary himself. The described non-arrival of the epistle has created for Ibn Tibbon the in-between condition necessary for him to write his own commentary on Kohelet. On the one hand, his request was not rejected by Maimonides on the grounds that there was no need for the writings of such further commentary. On the other hand, Maimonides himself did not get to realize the writing of such a commentary. The non-arrival of the epistle and even more so the death of Maimonides, are the conditions of possibility for Ibn Tibbon stepping out of his role as the commentator and translator of Maimonides and is turning into an independent author in the realm of the secrets of Torah. The question presented by Aviezer Ravitsky, one of the leading scholars of medieval Jewish philosophy, asking how come Ibn Tibbon did not hesitate, I quote, to address the master, the same master that once replied to him that he cannot even find a single hour to convene with him, and to ask him to write a philosophical commentary on Kohelet, Proverbs, and the Song of Songs. This was the question. Can be solved if we take into consideration the possibility that the very dispatch of the epistle was meant to be answered in the negative, or even better, not to be answered at all. The commentary on Kohelet was therefore written in a simultaneous attempt, in a particularly tensed combination, to remain under the shadow and to escape from the shadow of the guide of the perplexed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omer. Please stay here, and I invite